Welcome to the live stream. This is very last minute because my planning skills are bad. Today I'm here with Nikita Shulga, and we're going to talk about what it's like to contribute to PyTorch as an open source contributor and some of the interesting stuff that is going on in the PyTorch repository that you may not have known about, but make it very easy to work with PyTorch in open source. Nikita?
Thank you for the introduction, Ed. So let's talk a little bit what it takes to become a contributor. It's great if you have something to contribute, but if you don't, we always have a good first-time issues that I would advise anyone to look into it. So if you can see my screen, I have a PyTorch repository open. If you go to issues and search for the good first-time issues, you can find a bunch of issues that hasn't been claimed yet and you can work on. But since this is kind of a little bit planned, I already have an idea of a very simple change that I will demonstrate what it takes to contribute to PyTorch. So while working on one of the issues, I noticed that we have a test so we test tensors for various data types, and one of the tests spawns a test for a specific data type, but then says, the test is null. So the question is, why do we want to parameterize it there? So if we look into the code base, it's in the TestStorage.
Nikita, do you mind increasing your font size a little?
Sure. Is it better?
A little more. Awesome. Thank you.
Great. So if you go to test mask scatter, masked.
To be clear, though, the particular change we're going to make here doesn't really matter, right, for the discussion.
Yes, it is irrelevant. I just want to make some change that have meaningful impact, because if you're going to make a change that just rephrases something without actually changing anything slightly for the better, your change might not get reviewed and very likely get rejected because it is subjective. So let's do something objectively better. So if you look at the test, right, it's a very simple test. We parameterize it for all the D types, including Boolean D type, right? But then later when we run the test, we say, if D type is Boolean, then return. So we didn't even call the single operator. So why do we have this logic here? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete those lines, right? And I'm going to delete Boolean from here. Maybe the good thing before we do anything is just to show how it worked before, right? And how to run PyTorch tests. So suppose you have a PyTorch built locally. I have it on my Mac. You can have it on Windows, anywhere. If you want to run a test, you just execute Python, name of the test file that you modify. -v is just a verbose option to see what's going on. And -key allows you to just run a select few tests that you care about rather than running the entire test file, because running the entire test file will take you quite a while. So let's do it.
And one of the mistakes people new to the project make is they think, oh, I want to run every single test in PyTorch after I make my change. That's the obvious thing to do, because in a lot of Python projects, you can do exactly that. Please don't do that. It'll take hours, and a lot of stuff will probably fail anyway. So just run the test.
So if you want to iterate faster, just run the test that you care about. So I care about mask scatter, and I can see that, we tried to run 16 tests, and this is our mask scatter test pool that we want to get rid of, right? Because it's a no-op. Right, so let's go back to our code. So
another thing that I want to point out here is that the test method here is just test masked scatter. But in fact, when we ran the test, there were a bunch of different method names, one for each D type. So we have a homegrown test parameterizer. There's a few open source libraries in Python that do parameterization, but ours, the way it works is it generates new copies of the test method with the particular variant underscored on the end. So that's helpful to know when you're trying to understand what test is this test. If you grep for the entire test string, that probably won't give you any results. So you have to grep for the prefix that actually, so you don't want the CPU and you don't want the float 32, and then that'll let you find the test.
Right. So there is nothing. If I add the char, there is nothing. But as Ed said, we remove the parameter CPU and float 64, and here we go. We found our TestStorage. So we're looking into right now. Right. So, and you can see the test name have a self, and then it have two parameters, device type and data type. So here we go. We made the change. If you look at the change, that's all there is to it. Right, and then let's run it again. So like before we submit a PR, it's probably a good idea to test that, indeed the results are there. So like sorry, I deleted the previous one, but you can probably scroll it in the stream and see that it used to be 16 tests, now there's 15. Not much of a change, but it's a reasonable change. So let's make a commit. Let's make sure that we on some dev branch, or let's use GH stack. I prefer branches. So create a branch.
In any case, unless you actually regularly contribute to PyTorch, you won't be able to use GH stack anyway. So unfortunately,
yes.
We cannot inculcate our viewers on the joy of stack diffs.
Well, that can be fixed one of those days. So let's make a change. You don't need to use command line. I just prefer command line, but like whatever tool strikes you fancy. Actually, this change could have been made in the UI. So let's give it a small title. Be like remove bool type from mask select. Was it from mask select? I hope it was. Mask setter. And just submit your PR. Right, if you have GH tools installed on your machine, and have your token, then that's all it takes to submit a PR. And again, I have a write permission, but let's simulate that if I didn't. So let's
just to elaborate, GH is the official GitHub CLI published by GitHub for command line junkies like us. We love it because otherwise you have to push the branch to your local thing and then open up your web browser and then open a pull request that way. GH makes it very quick. So if you've never tried it out before, definitely give it a try.
Give it a try, and it even says how I should upgrade it. So GH distributed through the popular repositories. I'm on Mac, so here's a pull request, right? And it says I can update my GH stack. But that's kind of what's preliminary things. The next thing is I want to talk about is actually what happens after you author the PR, right? So here's a PR. One thing that's clear, it doesn't have a good description. So we are in collaboration with GitHub, have something called Copilot X, when we can ask AI to write a description for the PR. So let's ask it to do it. Do you remember the exact command?
No, I haven't used this feature yet. I'm a strong believer in homegrown commit messages.
Yes, so please don't do it.
No, you can do it. I mean, if you are too, I don't know. I find it varies a lot from developer to developer how much they like writing PR descriptions or not. But if you're not if you weren't going to write a PR description, I guess you can use this to get something.
Yes, but let's while it's probably, I don't know if I made a mistake. Summary, not description.
I'll go ahead and check what the syntax. Oh, summary. Okay.
Right, but let's talk about a few other important things in the lifetime of your PR. One is the PyTorch board command, right? So what it tells you is what's actually going on with your PR, because it's very hard. Sometimes it's hard to interpret considering the amount of tests that we're running, of what's going on, what is breaking. And looking at this comment will allow you to see in a condensed way what is currently tested, what is broken, where is your documentation if you update the documentation. So there's a useful links here. There is a way to complain about what's going on if something doesn't work to your liking. There is a way to see kind of high-level overview of what's going on. And here it will say how many tests are running.
Okay, but let's be clear, Nikita. The most important thing about this message is the big, bold HUD link.
Yes. So let's click on this one, right? That shows you our homegrown UI that gives you a bird's eye view of all the jobs that is running. Right now, there are a lot of pending jobs, but in a few and on different workflows, hopefully in a few minutes, we will see completed jobs with a green axis. And once your green axis are there, then, you're ready to merge the PR and you get your approval.
Nikita, why don't you open up one of your, you probably have some PRs that you opened a few, yesterday or something, right? Maybe some that have errors. I've got some if you don't have any, but
No, I do. So let's open some. I have a lot of them with errors. So let's, well, that's an old one, but still oldie but goodie, right? So you see the red big X. If you see the red big X, please be warned. Don't try to like, well, sometimes, so here's a new and important characteristics, right? When you see the big X, there's a new failures, and sometimes there's a known failures. So if you see known failures, very likely it's not your fault. But if you see big X and new failures, very, very likely that this is something that you introduced in the PR that caused a problem. And again, if you click on the HUD over there, it will show you in a bit, even more informative fashion, right? I can click on the link and it says exactly what had failed, like build did not complete successfully. And I exactly see like, this is the file where it failed to build.
this is the killer feature of the HUD. Because if you did this in GitHub UI, one, it takes a really long time to load the logs for some reason in the default GitHub Actions flow. And also, like, you don't get the nice like summarization of all the things that failed. Yeah, it also doesn't scroll you to the correct location. So the HUD will directly scroll you to where we think the relevant error message is, and it will nicely give you all the failed jobs up top so you can easily look at them. So I never use the default GitHub UI when I look at pull requests. I always use the HUD to look at them.
Thank you. Yeah, and kind of, again, if something doesn't work, there's a link, and there's a link to an office hours, or just file an issue. So, I expected to see the error didn't appear. We wouldn't know that we need to fix something unless you guys report it. So anyway, another interesting thing to notice about pull request, right? So let's look at this one again. And I have a generated command, which by removing redundant and unnecessary code, you see. Another interesting thing is labels here. So we don't run all the tests on every PR. So we split our testing into 4 major categories, right? Pull request tests, trunk tests, periodic tests, and some additional tests depending on your configuration. You might want to opt into this additional test by assigning a label, right? We have a label that starts with CI flow, and every label have a short explanation of what it does. So suppose I work on MPS and I want to make sure, which is like Apple's extension, like Apple's accelerated computer on their GPUs, and I want to make sure that my change doesn't regress this particular configuration, which we don't run by default. So I can add CI flow MPS and it will just run an MPS test for me, right? If you don't have a permission, like some users who are not regular contributors cannot assign labels, you can ask the bot. So that's a very important thing. So from now on, if you want to merge your PR, like you need to talk to the bot, right? So we have a bot called PyTorch bot, which listens to commands or requests that you leave on the comments. So let's say PyTorch bot label CI flow MPS.
So let me go ahead and approve this PR so you can actually also trigger a merge.
Thank you. Well, can you wait for a second? I want to show that, until it is approved, it will fail. So if I do this, right, and ask the bot to do something, you should see pretty quickly. Oh, PyTorch bot, sorry. That's a problem of live streams. It will assign the label that you wanted to assign. It wouldn't assign a new random label, but it would assign the existing CI flow label. So even if you don't have a permission, that should work. You see the bot reacted, saying it's seen my message, and I should see the label. Oh, here it is. So the bot is doing its job, right? And you can see in the HUD that a new workflow appeared called MPS that tests my...
Actually, Nikita, I have a question for you. So if I am a completely first-time contributor, I won't actually run any CI jobs because GitHub will gate it behind the first-time contributors require an approval to run their CI. How do I get around this?
Unfortunately, you can't. You need, well, you can ask for permission to be added like as a reader contributor, and then GitHub would not treat you as a first-time contributor, or you can CC one of the regular contributors and say, can you please approve my workflows? Unfortunately, the reason we're doing that is that GitHub CI is pretty powerful, and at some point it used to be mine Bitcoins. So as a protection against a completely like first-time contributions, we want to make sure that some very, very brief overview of the suggested change will be there before it runs.
We have a question on the stream. So Gandler asks, so to trigger the bot command, we need to resend the comment, i.e. delete and add a new comment instead of editing?
Correct. Yes. So bot will not react to edits. And actually, it is a security feature because imagine you ask bot to merge something, or like you ask bot to label something, then you change this command to a merge. So bot will not be happy. Yeah. So no edits are accepted. So yeah, let's try to merge it. So actually, I'm kind of in a weird situation because I see squash and merge, but majority of the users would not see squash and merge, but it doesn't mean you're not empowered to merge the change. Once your change is approved by a contributor who have a right to approve, you can go ahead and merge.
So Nikita, do you want me to go ahead and approve it right now?
Let's see what will happen if it's not approved. And very, very important thing. So regardless of the approval, you need to sign a contributor's license agreement with PyTorch, right? So one of the checks over there is easy CLA. It is very, very important. So no contributions from anyone is accepted until the person agrees to contribute code to the PyTorch Foundation.
But the CLA is run by Linux Foundation.
Yes, yes. There used to be a comment there saying that, you know, you haven't signed CLA, but since I signed it a long time
ago. Well, I mean, so you signed it, so PyTorch bot.
Oh, merge. Right. If I try to sign it, merge it, it should refuse saying that my change is not reviewed. Well,
it gives you the little funny question. One more thing about the discussion we had about first-time contributors. So even if you don't know who to add as a reviewer on your PR, we do have a triage process. So your PR will get labeled with the open source label, and we have someone who will go through all of these pull requests and assign someone to it, and hopefully also like approve CI if the change looks reasonable. So don't worry, like, you know, we've got a process in place, and you know it should automatically work. You might have to wait a day or two though.
Thank you for clarifying. So now if you can please approve it.
All right, let's go. So approve.
98015.
I got it.
Thank you. So if I do it again, it will start a merge process. And again, like we never merge pull requests into the code repository. The whole point of mergebot is that it validates and waits for all the CI to finish until it merges, but it can ignore some of the CI it knows flaky or irrelevant. If you're not sure what command to use, you can always ask bot for help, and we'll tell you the list of commands. So you can say merge, ignore known failures, right? So if like, if HUD says there that, you know, you have some known failures, you can say, you know, I want to ignore them. And that's more or less everything you need to do to become a contributor. Like pay attention to the signal on HUD, create a PR, assign labels. If you can't assign labels, ask bot about it. If you want like additional testing, and then press merge, right? And
actually, I have a question for you, which is, if my PR has been approved by someone, but I'm not a contributor to the PyTorch repo, can I merge it?
Oh, but no, if you're first-time contributor, you cannot. If you are a regular contributor, yes, you can. Like you don't need to wait for a contributor, for the person who approved to issue a merge command. So almost anybody with, I think, triage permission can issue a merge command. So like we unfortunately do not allow merges again from like person, but if you want to get a triage permissions, that's a very easy request to satisfy once you sign a CLA and whatever. And we can revisit it, right? The reason for that, because merge command right now enables chunk testing. And some of the chunk testing involves like using GitHub secrets. So we want some control about like who can issue the merge command, because again, we don't want the secret to be stolen. But if we remove this, then we can leave this constraint and anyone can issue a merge command.
Okay, sounds great to me. Anything else we want to say?
We probably like talk about hypothetical situations. So what might happen in the future, right? So you issue a merge command. We should see a command soon enough that your merge process started. What happens if your merge process like fails? There are several remediation strategies. First of all, you can rebase. You can ask the merge bot to like rebase and merge right away. You can just say PyTorch merge -r, and hopefully it will rebase you on the stable change. So like there's nothing. Another thing, even after you land and change and did everything correctly, your change can be removed. Please don't be can be reverted. Please don't be discouraged by that, because it's a normal process. Sometimes race conditions happen, so someone introduces a new test that starts to fail as a result of the changes that you're making, and you just need to revisit it. But you don't need to like start a new PR necessarily. You can continue working on the same one and like just submit it as a second iteration. Yeah, so you see the merge bot started, and you can look at the like process that is doing the merge here. It's not very informative, and it's probably going to take a couple of hours. After your PR is merged, you can see the status of the PR on the HUD, right? So the HUD have a nice view of all the tests that we're running. Oh, we have a lot of red. Like question marks means that we still don't know the results. Green check mark means that everything's good, and X means that something's bad and it needs to be investigated. So it looks like this change caused some regressions, and we probably need to fix that. Oh no, we have like a small CI outage. Oh yeah, another thing. So if we have a CI outage, you would see message here saying that CI cannot be used at the moment. Please try again later. Unfortunately, it happens sometimes, and yeah, we also need to account for that.
All right.
But yeah,
well, thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you very much for your time.
Cheers.